Mom, why is there nothing in your refrigerator? Nathan's voice cut through the silence of my kitchen so sharply that I nearly dropped the spoon in my hand. I froze beside the stove, staring down at the small pot of canned peas warming over low heat. For a moment, neither of us moved. The old wall clock ticked loudly behind him. Tick. 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 I forced a smile and reached for the chipped white plate sitting beside the sink. I already ate earlier, I said softly. But the lie sounded weak even to my own ears. Nathan stepped closer. His expensive leather shoes creaked against the faded linoleum floor my husband had installed nearly 30 years ago. I watched his eyes move slowly around the kitchen, the nearly empty bread box, the stack of overdue utility bills beside the microwave, the single gallon of milk with tomorrow's expiration date written across the cap in black marker. Then his eyes landed on my dinner plate. One slice of toast. Half a scoop of peas. Nothing else. His expression changed instantly. Mom, he whispered again, quieter this time. I looked away before he could see the embarrassment on my face. Outside, freezing rain tapped softly against the kitchen window. The heater rattled once, then went silent again. I wrapped my cardigan tighter around my shoulders and pretended not to notice. You shouldn't have driven all the way out here during this weather, I said, trying to change the subject. The roads are bad tonight. But Nathan wasn't listening anymore. He walked past me and opened the refrigerator. The light flickered weakly over nearly empty shelves. A jar of mustard. A carton of eggs. 2 bottles of water. Nothing else. Absolute silence filled the kitchen. I could actually hear him breathing now. Slow at first, then uneven. Jesus Christ, he muttered under his breath. I hated that look on his face. That mixture of confusion, guilt, and something dangerously close to panic. For 2 years, I had worked very hard to make sure my son never looked at me like that. I'm fine, I said quickly. Too quickly. At my age, people don't eat much anyway. Nathan slowly closed the refrigerator door and turned toward me. His jaw tightened. Claire told me you were doing great. My stomach sank the moment he said her name. I lowered myself carefully into the kitchen chair beside the window, hiding the slight tremble in my hands. Claire worries too much, I replied with a faint smile. But Nathan didn't smile back. He stared at my empty plate again, then at the pill cutter sitting beside my coffee mug. The room suddenly felt smaller. Colder. And in that moment, I realized something had changed in my son's eyes forever. Nathan did not leave that night. That alone told me how serious this had become. Usually, his visits lasted 20 minutes at most. A quick coffee, a distracted conversation, then another phone call pulling him back toward his real life across the city. But now he stood near the kitchen counter with his arms folded tightly across his chest, staring at the old thermostat on the wall like it had personally betrayed him. It is 58 degrees in here, he said finally. Mom, that is not normal. I gave a small shrug and reached for my tea mug. The ceramic felt cold in my hands. The heater works when it wants to. Why did you not call somebody? I looked down at the weak tea swirling inside the cup. Repair companies are expensive. The moment the words left my mouth, silence filled the room again. Heavy silence. The kind that settles into your chest and stays there. Nathan rubbed a hand over his face slowly. I could see exhaustion in him now. Not physical exhaustion, emotional exhaustion. Like his mind was racing backward through hundreds of missed signs all at once. He opened one of the kitchen cabinets beside the sink. Nearly empty. Another cabinet. Empty soup cans stacked carefully in the corner. Then the freezer. Frozen bread. Ice trays. Nothing else. I watched his throat tighten. How long has it been like this? He asked quietly. I tried to laugh softly, but it sounded thin and brittle. Oh, do not look so dramatic. Older women survive on very little. He turned toward me so quickly that I regretted saying it immediately. "Do not do that," he snapped. "Do not make jokes right now." His voice echoed harder than he intended. For a second, we both froze. Nathan rarely raised his voice at me. Even as a child, he had been gentle by nature. He looked away almost instantly, guilt flashing across his face. "I am sorry," he muttered. He stopped speaking. Outside, headlights passed slowly across the rain-covered window, casting pale streaks of light through the kitchen. I noticed Nathan staring at the pill cutter again. Then he reached toward the orange prescription bottle beside it. His eyebrows pulled together. "Mom, these pills expired 3 months ago." My fingers tightened around the mug. "They still work." "No, they do not." His voice dropped lower now. Quieter. More dangerous somehow. "How often are you skipping medication?" I did not answer. I did not need to. Nathan closed his eyes for a long moment. When he opened them again, something inside him looked shaken loose. "Claire told me you had savings," he said carefully. "She said you were comfortable after Dad passed away." At the mention of my husband, my chest ached sharply. Robert had spent 38 years making sure I never worried about money. 38 years telling me, "If anything happens to me, Nathan will always take care of you." I stared at the faded wedding photo sitting near the refrigerator. Robert smiling proudly beside me in his navy suit, both of us still young enough to believe life stayed simple forever. "I did not want to become a burden," I whispered. Nathan looked at me then, really looked at me, and for the first time since he walked into that kitchen, I saw fear settling into his face. Nathan insisted on driving me to the grocery store the next morning. I told him it was unnecessary at least 4 different times, but he ignored every excuse with the same quiet expression on his face. The rain had stopped overnight, leaving the streets covered in thin sheets of ice that reflected the pale winter sunlight. His black SUV looked strangely out of place beside my aging little sedan with the cracked tail light and faded paint. As soon as we stepped inside the grocery store, I regretted agreeing to come. Nathan pushed the cart slowly through the aisles while I walked beside him clutching my purse with both hands. The store smelled like fresh bread and roasted chicken. Warm. Comfortable. Normal. It had been months since I had allowed myself to buy anything that was not absolutely necessary. Nathan reached for a package of chicken breasts and dropped it into the cart. Then soup. Fresh fruit. Coffee. Eggs. Butter. Each item landed with a soft thud that made my chest tighten more and more. "Nathan," I said quietly, "that is enough." He did not answer. His jaw stayed tense as he continued walking. At the dairy section, he suddenly stopped moving altogether. "You used to make Dad blueberry pancakes every Sunday," he said without looking at me. "Remember?" My throat tightened instantly. Robert loved blueberry pancakes. Even after 30 years of marriage, he still kissed my cheek every Sunday morning when I carried the plate to the table. "You always burned the first batch," Nathan added softly. A weak smile crossed my face before I could stop it. "Your father liked them that way." For one brief second, the tension eased between us. Then Nathan looked down into the nearly empty cart and the sadness returned to his eyes immediately. "How long since you bought groceries like this?" he asked. I looked away toward the frozen food section. "I manage." "That is not an answer." His tone was calm now, but sharper somehow. More controlled. We continued shopping in silence after that. When we reached the checkout line, Nathan picked up one of the utility bills folded inside my purse where it had slipped loose earlier. I saw his expression darken as he scanned the bright red letters stamped across the envelope. Final notice. Past due, $742.16. He stared at it for several seconds before turning toward me slowly. "Why did not you tell me?" The shame hit harder than I expected. Worse than hunger. Worse than cold nights. "Because you have your own family," I whispered. "Your own responsibilities." Nathan let out a quiet breath through his nose and rubbed his hand across his beard the same way his father used to when he was upset. Mom. I send money every month. My heartbeat slowed strangely inside my chest. There it was again. That sentence. The same sentence that had followed me like a shadow. Since last night. I tightened my grip on the shopping cart. Nathan, I said carefully, what money are you talking about? He blinked at me once. Then twice. And suddenly, all the color drained from his face. The drive back to my house felt strangely quiet after that. Nathan kept both hands locked tightly around the steering wheel while winter sunlight flashed across the windshield in pale silver streaks. I sat beside him with my purse in my lap, replaying his words over and over inside my head. I send money every month. The sentence would not leave me alone. It settled heavily into the silence between us like something alive. When we pulled into my driveway, Nathan did not move right away. The engine continued humming softly while cold air fogged the corners of the windows. Finally, he reached into the inside pocket of his coat and pulled out his phone. I want to show you something, he said quietly. My stomach tightened instantly. He opened his banking application and turned the screen toward me. Row after row of transfers filled the display. Monthly transfers. $1,500 each. Sometimes $2,000. Every single one labeled mom support. My fingers began trembling before I even realized it. Nathan, I whispered. I swear to you. I have never seen this money. He swallowed hard and scrolled farther down. 2 full years of payments. 24 months. My chest felt hollow suddenly. 24 months of skipped meals. 24 months of cutting pills in half. 24 months of sitting alone in a freezing house believing I simply needed to survive quietly without becoming a burden. Nathan stared at the screen with a look I had never seen on his face before. Not anger. Not yet. This looked worse. This looked like guilt beginning to rot into something dangerous. Claire handles most of our household accounts, he said slowly, almost as if he were speaking to himself. I gave her your routing number after Dad passed away. The world seemed to tilt slightly around me. My late husband had trusted Nathan completely. And Nathan had trusted his wife. Suddenly, memories started surfacing one after another like puzzle pieces rising from dark water. Claire insisting she would help organize things after Robert's funeral. Claire volunteering to collect my mail while I stayed with Evelyn for a week during the storm last winter. Claire always answering Nathan's calls whenever I tried reaching him directly. Your mother sounds tired. Your mother says she is doing great. Your mother does not need anything. I closed my eyes briefly. Oh God. Nathan looked at me sharply. What is it? I hesitated for several seconds before answering. There were moments, I said softly. Small things I ignored. He waited silently. Last Christmas, I thanked Claire for the grocery gift card she supposedly sent me. My throat tightened painfully. She smiled at me strangely and said maybe I had already spent it and forgotten. Nathan stared at me without blinking. I never sent a grocery card, he said quietly. A cold feeling spread through my chest. Outside, wind rattled the bare tree branches against the roof of the garage. Neither of us spoke for a long moment. Then Nathan reached for his phone again very slowly. His face had gone pale now. Controlled. Still. Too still. Mom, he said carefully, I need to ask you something, and I need you to answer honestly. I looked at him. How many nights have you gone to bed hungry? I could not answer him right away. The question sat between us in the cold car like something fragile and unbearable. How many nights had I gone to bed hungry? I stared through the windshield at my small house with its peeling white paint and frozen flower beds buried under winter frost. For years, Robert had kept that little house warm and full of laughter. Now it looked tired. Lonely. Like me. Mom. Nathan's voice softened slightly. Please. I folded my hands together tightly in my lap so he would not see them shaking. Sometimes dinner just did not seem necessary, I said quietly. It was a careful answer. A cowardly one. Nathan looked at me for several seconds before speaking again. That is not what I asked. I closed my eyes briefly. Shame has a strange taste to it. Bitter, heavy, exhausting. Worse than hunger itself. A few nights here and there, I whispered. The lie barely left my mouth before tears filled Nathan's eyes. Not dramatic tears. Not loud crying. Just silent devastation spreading slowly across his face. Mom, his voice cracked on the word. I turned away immediately. Seeing my son hurt somehow felt even worse than being hungry. I did not want you worrying about me, I said softly. You work hard. You have responsibilities. Claire always said money was tight lately. Nathan blinked slowly as if each word physically hurt him now. Tight, he repeated quietly. Mom, last summer we spent $11,000 remodeling our patio. I felt my stomach sink deeper. $11,000. I tried to imagine how many grocery trips that could have covered. How many prescriptions. How many warm nights with the heater running. Nathan leaned back heavily against the driver's seat and stared at the roof of the car. Oh my God, he muttered under his breath. Oh my God. The silence stretched painfully after that. Cars rolled past at the end of the street while icy wind swept dead leaves across my driveway. Finally, Nathan straightened suddenly and grabbed his phone again. His movements looked sharper now. Colder. Focused. He opened his messages and scrolled quickly until Claire's name appeared across the screen beside a smiling photo of the two of them from last summer. Before he pressed call, I touched his arm gently. Nathan, maybe there is an explanation. He looked at me with an expression I could not quite recognize anymore. If there is, he said quietly, I would really love to hear it. Claire answered on the third ring. Her cheerful voice filled the car instantly. Hey babe, are you still with your mom? Nathan's jaw tightened visibly. Yeah, he said flatly. I am. There was a small pause. Everything okay? She asked carefully. Nathan stared straight ahead through the windshield. Funny thing, he said slowly. Mom says she never received a single dollar from us. Complete silence exploded through the speaker. Then Claire laughed softly. Too softly. What are you talking about? She asked. And right there, before she even finished the sentence, I watched something inside my son finally begin to break. Claire did not sound nervous at first. That was the part one would remember later. Her voice stayed smooth and polished through the phone speaker, calm in the same practiced way she always sounded during holiday dinners or neighborhood parties. Nathan, your mother is confused, she said gently. We talked about this already, remember? Nathan stared straight ahead without blinking. No, he replied quietly. I do not remember talking about my mother starving. The word starving changed everything. Silence crashed through the call instantly. Even the air inside the car felt heavier afterward. Claire let out a short laugh that sounded forced now. Oh come on, that is dramatic. Eleanor always exaggerates things when she feels emotional. I flinched slightly at hearing my own name spoken like that. Nathan noticed immediately. His expression darkened further. Do not do that, he said coldly. Do not talk about her like she is not sitting right here. Another pause. Longer this time. Then Claire's tone shifted almost imperceptibly. Sharper. Nathan, I think maybe you should calm down before jumping to conclusions. He laughed once under his breath. A humorless sound. Jumping to conclusions, he repeated quietly. Claire, I just opened my mother's refrigerator and there was almost nothing inside. Well, maybe she refuses to grocery shop, Claire snapped quickly. She does that sometimes. She is stubborn. Nathan turned toward me slowly after hearing that. His eyes moved across my coat sleeves that had become too loose over the past year. My thin wrists. My trembling hands resting in my lap. And suddenly, he looked furious. Not loud furious. Worse. The kind of anger that becomes completely still. I transferred over $40,000, he said carefully. Where did it go? Claire inhaled sharply on the other end of the line. Tiny sound. Barely noticeable. But Nathan heard it too. I could see it in his face immediately. Nathan, she started. Do not. His voice cut through her words like ice. Answer the question. For several seconds, all we could hear was faint static from the speaker and passing traffic outside the car. Then Claire exhaled heavily. Some of it went toward household expenses, she admitted. Our household expenses. Nathan's face went pale. What? You said yourself your mother did not need much help, Claire continued faster now, words spilling over each other. You were busy all the time and somebody had to manage things. I figured we could borrow it temporarily until finances stabilized. Borrow. The word made my stomach twist painfully. Nathan stared ahead in complete silence. Claire kept talking nervously now, rushing to fill the emptiness. I was going to pay it back eventually. And honestly, Eleanor never complained. She always said she was fine. Tears burned behind my eyes then because she was right about one thing. I never complained. Mothers from my generation were taught not to. We learned how to survive quietly. Nathan suddenly opened the car door and stepped out into the freezing afternoon air without another word. I watched him walk several feet away across the driveway, phone still pressed tightly against his ear. His shoulders looked rigid beneath his dark coat. Tense. Shaking slightly. Through the windshield, I could see his breath fogging in the cold while Claire's muffled voice continued spilling frantically through the speaker. Then Nathan lowered his head slowly into one hand, and for the first time since his father's funeral, I saw my son completely fall apart. Nathan stayed outside for almost 10 minutes. I watched him through the windshield while cold wind whipped across the driveway and rattled the bare branches overhead. He paced slowly beside the mailbox, one hand gripping the back of his neck while the other held the phone tightly against his ear. Even from inside the car, I could hear Claire's muffled voice rising and falling through the speaker. Fast. Defensive. Panicked now. Several times Nathan stopped walking altogether and simply stared down at the frozen ground like he could not understand how his entire life had shifted in a single afternoon. Then finally, he ended the call. He stood motionless for a few seconds before climbing back into the driver's seat beside me. The moment the door closed, silence swallowed the car again. Nathan looked exhausted. Suddenly. Older somehow. She knew, he said quietly. I did not answer. Part of me had already known that too. He rested both hands against the steering wheel and laughed bitterly under his breath. The worst part is, he stopped speaking for a moment and swallowed hard. The worst part is that she made it sound reasonable. I turned toward him slowly. Nathan stared straight ahead. She kept saying things like, your mother is old-fashioned, your mother never spends money anyway, your mother would not even notice. His jaw tightened visibly. Jesus Christ. I looked down at my hands again. Thin hands now. Older than I remembered them being. Nathan, I said softly. Do not destroy your marriage over me. He turned toward me so fast that the sadness in his face almost startled me. Over you? He repeated quietly. Mom, you skipped meals while I thought I was taking care of you. His voice cracked painfully at the end. Do you understand what that feels like? I could not answer because suddenly my own throat hurt too much. Nathan leaned back against the seat and covered his eyes briefly with one hand. Dad trusted me, he whispered. The day before he died, he grabbed my arm in that hospital room and told me. Look after your mother for me. Tears burned behind my eyes instantly. I remembered that moment. Robert weak beneath stiff white hospital sheets, tubes running beside his bed, still more worried about me than himself. Nathan lowered his hand slowly. And I failed him. No, I said quickly. No, sweetheart. You did not know. I should have known. The words came out sharper this time. More angry at himself than anyone else. I should have looked closer. Outside, evening shadows were beginning to stretch across the neighborhood. Porch lights flickered on one by one down the street while the temperature dropped lower with every passing minute. Nathan suddenly reached into the back seat and grabbed the grocery bags we had forgotten earlier. Come on, he said quietly. You are not sitting in this cold car anymore. We carried the bags inside together without speaking much. But once we stepped into the kitchen, Nathan froze again. His eyes landed on the tiny space heater plugged beside the table. The old heater hummed weakly while a piece of duct tape held part of the cord together near the base. Nathan stared at it in disbelief. Then slowly, painfully, he looked around the kitchen one more time. At the dim lighting. The peeling wallpaper. The empty fruit bowl sitting untouched on the counter. And I could see it happening right in front of me. My son was finally seeing how I had really been living. That night, Nathan refused to leave. He carried every grocery bag into the kitchen himself while I stood near the sink pretending not to notice the way he kept looking around the house. Not casually anymore. Carefully. Like a man examining the ruins of something he thought was safe. He filled my refrigerator slowly and methodically. Milk on the top shelf. Eggs in the drawer. Fresh vegetables lined carefully beside containers of soup and chicken salad. The refrigerator looked almost unfamiliar by the time he finished. Too full. Too bright. I stood there quietly gripping the edge of the counter while cold air spilled from the open refrigerator door across my slippers. You bought too much, I murmured. Nathan did not answer immediately. He kept arranging groceries in silence before finally shutting the refrigerator door with both hands. No, he said softly. I bought what should have already been here. The words settled heavily between us. I looked away first. A little later, Nathan insisted on making dinner himself. I almost smiled watching him move awkwardly around my tiny kitchen trying to remember where I kept things. He burned the first grilled cheese sandwich exactly the same way Robert used to. That nearly broke me. The smell of toasted bread and butter filled the kitchen slowly, warm and familiar in a way the house had not felt for a very long time. Nathan set a bowl of tomato soup beside me at the table along with half the sandwich cut neatly into triangles. Eat, he said gently. I stared down at the plate for several seconds before touching the spoon. My throat tightened unexpectedly. It had been so long since someone made food for me instead of the other way around. Nathan sat across from me without eating much himself. He just watched quietly while I took small careful bites of soup. The silence between us no longer felt cold now. It felt heavy with regret. Halfway through dinner, Nathan suddenly spoke. How did I miss all of this? I lowered my spoon slowly. Life gets busy, I answered softly. He shook his head immediately. That is not an excuse. His eyes drifted toward the old family photos lining the wall beside the kitchen table. Robert teaching Nathan how to fish at Lake Martin. Nathan graduating high school in his blue cap and gown. Christmas mornings crowded around this same table when the house used to feel alive from sunrise until midnight. You spent your whole life taking care of everybody else, he whispered. And I let you disappear. Tears blurred my vision instantly. I reached for my napkin quickly before he could notice. You did not let anything happen, I said quietly. Claire made choices too. Nathan looked down at his untouched sandwich for a long moment. I keep thinking about Dad, he admitted softly. He trusted me. Outside, snow had started falling lightly beneath the streetlights, soft white flakes drifting across the dark windows. The kitchen glowed with warm yellow light while the tiny space heater hummed weakly near the wall. Nathan stared at it again. Then at me. Then finally he stood up without a word, walked into the hallway, and pulled his phone from his pocket once more. This time, when he called Claire, there was nothing uncertain left in his voice at all. Claire arrived 20 minutes later. Snow clung to the shoulders of her cream-colored coat as she stepped into the kitchen carrying the sharp scent of expensive perfume and cold winter air with her. For a brief moment, nobody spoke. The old clock ticked softly on the wall while steam rose from the untouched bowl of soup still sitting in front of me. Claire looked at the groceries filling the counters first. Then at Nathan. Then finally at me. I noticed the exact moment she realized everything had changed. "Nathan," she began carefully, forcing a small smile, "can we please talk privately?" "No," he answered immediately. His voice sounded calm. Now. Too calm. Claire blinked in surprise. "I think your mother has misunderstood some things." Nathan laughed softly under his breath and shook his head. "No. I misunderstood things." The silence after that felt enormous. Claire crossed her arms tightly over herself. "I already explained the money situation," she said defensively. "We were under pressure financially and I fully intended to replace it." Nathan stared at her in disbelief. "You watched my mother live like this?" Claire's eyes flashed with irritation then. "Oh please, stop acting like she was homeless. Eleanor never asked for anything." The words hit harder than shouting ever could have. Nathan stepped back slowly as if he no longer recognized the woman standing in front of him. "That is exactly the problem," he said quietly. "She should never have had to ask." Claire opened her mouth again, but no words came out this time. The kitchen suddenly felt very small around the three of us. I looked down at my hands resting beside the empty soup bowl and realized something strange. For months, maybe years, I had felt invisible inside my own life. Small. Easy to overlook. But now the truth sat fully exposed beneath the warm kitchen light where nobody could ignore it anymore. Nathan finally spoke again without taking his eyes off Claire. "Tomorrow I am opening a separate account for Mom myself." His tone remained steady. "Final. And I think you and I need some time apart." Claire's face drained of color instantly. "Nathan, no," he shook his head once. "I trusted you." For the first time all evening, Claire looked uncertain. Not polished. Not controlled. Just frightened. She glanced toward me then as if expecting sympathy, but I had nothing left to offer her anymore. Only exhaustion. After several long seconds, Claire quietly picked up her purse from the counter and walked toward the front door without another word. The door closed softly behind her. No dramatic scene. No screaming. Just silence. Nathan stood motionless in the middle of the kitchen for a while after she left. Then finally he looked at me with tears filling his eyes again. "I am so sorry, Mom." I reached across the table and covered his hand gently with mine. "You came back," I whispered. "That matters." Outside, snow continued falling softly across the neighborhood while warm light filled the kitchen once more. And for the first time in a very long time, the house no longer felt empty. If this story touched your heart, I would love to know what you think. Have you ever hidden your struggles from someone you loved, or discovered too late that somebody close to you was suffering in silence? Please share your thoughts and experiences in the comments. Sometimes the smallest signs are the ones that change everything.